Hi, this is Cheryl of Majestic Wire Artworks. In this video, I am going to show you how to make this beautiful Radiance wire woven heart pendant. In this, you can use different types of beads. What I have demonstrated here is a round faceted crystal in the center. This is an 8mm, and I have used 4x3 rondelle crystals, and I honestly think that these are really nice sizes to work with. But as a request from a customer, to the pendant I'm making today, I'm actually using some genuine turquoise, and it's a greeny turquoise, and it really looks green under the camera today. But this is the 8mm bead, and I'm using these tiny little beads. These are just barely 4mm beads, so I'm not exactly sure how many I'm going to require. In this one, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and another 5 is 18. So I might need more, or it might be the same. We will know when we're done, and you will have to do the same too, depending on what size your beads are, and what size this wire ends up being here, because it's kind of free form. You got to be flexible with the number of beads you're going to need. Okay, and let's get started. As per usual, I'm going to have the supply list in the description, so just check it out below. And this is very different how I've gotten the wire. I've got the 3 wires are 3 different lengths, but if you're not worried about waste, it might be easier if you do the bail wire the one length, then the other 2 wires the same length, the longest of the 2. I have the bail wire is measured at 13.5 inches, and the middle wire, which is what does the weaving around the beads, is the longest wire, and it's 24 inches. And I'll have metric written for you in the description. And then the wire that the beads are sitting on around here is 19 inches, but you could make that 24 too if it makes it easier for you. But I know that there's some people that don't like waste, so I have tried to make it as accurate as possible. You still have a little bit of waste, but not nearly as much. Okay, so first we're going to start with the technique for making your bail. And I'm actually going to be working with some shorter wires, so I'm not fighting with the table to demonstrate the techniques. And then once we pause and stuff, I'll bring out the real one, the real McCoy, as per se, and we will get going on that to learn the final techniques. Okay, so first I want you to take your 20 gauge wire, and that's 0.8 millimeters for the metric people, and you have 13.5 inch length. So I want you to take that, and I want you to measure 4.5 inches from the one end. Doesn't matter which end. Okay, 4.5, and give it a bend. Okay. So on the longer side, you should have approximately 9 inches, and then 4.5 for making the bail. So you're going to have the 9-inch length in your hand, and you're going to have the pliers clamped around the 4.5, the shorter piece, and you're going to have the wire pointing away from you, and it's bent, so it's going to make it nice and neat to make your bail. And we're going to wrap twice around the largest part of your round nose plier. So you're going to bend snugly around there. Take your pliers out, put them back in so you can continue with your wrap. And of course you want it to be neater than that. It ended up, the wire I made was too long, and it did end up fighting with the mat. So it should be neater than what I've got here. So I'm going to try tightening that up just to make it neater, and it's not going to. So I'm going to back it up. So this is a, for instance, if it happens to you, you back it up and you pull it tight. And it should fix that. And it did to some degree. Okay. There. And now I'm going to wrap it around 3 times. That's all we need. Just 3 neat wraps. Although, if it's not neat, don't stress about it, because it's going to be wrapped around later on your pendant, so you won't even see how messy or neat it was. Okay, so I'll give you an example. See, that's the back. Isn't it pretty from the back? Sometimes I have people wearing their necklaces from me backwards, and then at the front we put a coil in front of it to finish it off. So yeah, no worries whether it's a neat job or not. Okay, so but yeah, I'm not really happy with the neatness I did of that, but that's because I'm fighting the wire fights with the mat, and that makes it difficult. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to well, you can trim this end off for one and crimp it down as you would, and then that part's done. There, that's done. Okay, and now I want you to look what is the neatest part of your, which side is neater of your bail, and make that the front. Okay, and then make a right angle like this, because that's going to be the center of your heart. Okay, so the next step is we're going to start our weaving of our 2-2 weave. And speaking of which, I don't always use the 2-2 weave, but it's a weave that works up really, really fast. Here's an old heart that I made. It's actually so old I have to mail it away. And I've done a 1-2-3 weave here. And it just gives it a totally different look, doesn't it? And I've used amethyst and dyed agate beads. And I used less beads because they're bigger. Little variations. Okay, so moving along, I want you to take your top wire, which is the bail wire, and your 26 gauge weaving wire, and wrap around once and squish those together and pull it tight so it's really gripping the wire. Then I want you to take your longest wire, which is your 24-inch length of wire, and we're going to ignore the end. We're just going to make it so it's easier to weave. We're weaving near the end here. And I stagger mine to make it just easier keeping track of what wire's what. So the middle wire, we want just a little bit longer here than the top wire. And I want you to hold it close together and loop around the second wire once like that. So it's been wrapped around once on the top wire and then wrapped around once on the second wire. And then you introduce your bottom wire to it, which is the 19-inch length, or it could be a second 24-inch length if you wanted to make it easier. Okay, and give it that staggered length here on the end again. And hold them together. And just wrap around that third wire. And that's just going to hold them together while you work. It holds pretty good. I'm going to slide it down a little bit. Okay, now we're going to do the 2-2 weave, as I call it, or the zipper weave. So we're going to come back around all 3 wires, up around the top. Not too tight, I'll let go. But I was tight when I made the top bend there. So it just helps keep things neat. And we're going to go through the bottom 2 wires. And up again. Through the bottom 2 wires. Now I'm coming up through the top 2 wires. Come on, don't go out of focus. And down and around. And again, the second time. Okay, so now I've got that bend to make it nice and neat. And I'm coming up around the top again and repeating the same thing again. Oops. Squish it together. Now I'll explain it again with the next sequence. Okay. So I've got it bent at the bottom and I'm got it fairly firm and wrapping it around, letting go so it doesn't make it the wrap too tight, but it formed the bend, which will keep it neat. And then I'm just putting it through those 2 wires, pushing it over, up again, bend, let go with the tension, pull through there, like that. Okay, now I've got it, I'm pulling firm there. But now I'll let go again and pushing it there, pulling it tight, up, letting go the tension again, through there, pushing it over, tension's tight, up. Okay, now I'm going back behind all 3 to start again. And that's all there's to it, to that weave. Okay, so every so often you see it a little bit loose. I want you to cinch it up together. About every 3 patterns is usually good. You can go 4 patterns. It depends what your weaving looks like. If you find that your stitches spread apart too far, you can just go along and push them together like that. And you want to straighten them as best you can before you make your heart. And it's best just to check your work as you go and straighten it out as you go, because then it's not so much tedious work all at once. So I want you to take your time weaving, enjoy the process, and don't rush yourself. And when you've done 2 1/4 inches of weaving length, then I want you to stop. Do not snip off your end, because we're going to keep it attached because there's more weaving to do later on in the heart, and we want it to stay attached. Okay, so don't snip off the end, and you will have extra. So I will see you back when you've got your 2 1/4 inches of weaving done. Okay, see you in a bit. Hi, I'm back. I don't have my weaving done yet, But I just realized I forgot to mention a step to you. As you're weaving, you're going to run out of length here. And I just did this, and that's what reminded me, is as you need to take your chain nose pliers and pull each wire just a little bit longer to give you more working space, and it ends up moving your weaving down the road. So I'm sorry for forgetting to mention that. I'm really hoping you watch the entire video at least once before you start your project. So I'm going to put it on pause, and I'm going to finish my weaving and see you in a bit. Okay, I'm back, and I've got just a hair bit more than 2 1/4 inches, and that's good. You could do 2 1/3 inch. So the next step, well, do not trim off your weaving wire because we need it. We want to take the bail wire, and which is the top wire, tangled there. See, there's the bail, and turn it upright. It might move on you. And I want you to take your pliers, and I want you to pull the bail wire so that the bail snugs up right next to this weaving. And see if I can do it in front of you. And yes, it worked. Okay, I was worried I wouldn't be able to do that. And now I'm going to snip off this tail. Okay, I'm going to peek over the camera. There we go. And I'm just going to crimp it in a bit. Okay. It'll end up, it's sticking up there. It'll end up getting wrapped around. That's okay. There. Now I can see that I've got the wires not quite level, and so I'm just going to straighten these up as best possible, just so they look neat. Okay, it's not bad. And gently I'm going to squish this so that the wires sit level. Don't want to do it too hard. Okay, there. You can see right there, I was a little bit loose on that stitch. Not sure what happened there, but I have to live with our little imperfections. Okay, so the next thing we got to do is pull these other 2 wires so that the ends match up with this one. So that's our measurement. That's why I made this that certain length, because this is we want it to be approximately 9 inches from the bail to the end of this, and we want all 3 wires to be 9 inches. So now I'm going to pull, I don't know if I can do this while on camera. I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to pull this. Oh, not quite. Just a little bit more. Remember, this is, it doesn't have to be perfect, just an approximation. But there we go. I did a little bit too far. That's okay. It's going to be okay. And this one. And I think I did that one even further. Yeah. Okay. And that's going to be okay as well. Okay. So the next step is we're going to work on this side. And we're going to put the beads on and do the seaweed wrap around it. It could be considered a weave or a wrap, however you want to think of it. And we want to make the same length as this. So if you're over 2 1/4 inches, if you went to 2 1/2 inches, you need the same amount of beadwork on this side so that the heart becomes balanced. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, hopefully I can do this on camera, is you take the shorter of the two wires, and that's what the bead is going to go on, and put on one bead, one of your smaller 4mm beads, 4x3 rondelles. Okay. Oh, I forgot a step. Take that bead off again. Now this is an awkward step. We're going to wrap once around this wire. You'll see what I mean right away. Yeah, this is very awkward. Okay. Okay, so I'm around the wire once, and I'm in front of the wire, so that's important. Okay, there. And now I'm going to put the bead on. The shorter of the two wires. Okay, slide that on. And you may have seen this technique in one of my other videos. Okay, and I'm going to hold that bead in place, and I'm going to wrap halfway around the bead, like that. Okay, and now I'm going to wrap around this wire again. And I'm going to snug that up. Okay, and it can move on you. I'll warn you that. And we just do the best we can to balance it out. And now we're going to introduce the next bead. Okay, so that's the back. It's upside down. There. Okay, so with this wrap, it goes around, it goes up and down and up and down. So now we're going to use this bead to tighten up that wire nice and tight to the next bead. So I'm putting pressure on here and holding the bead in place, and I'm taking this wire and wrapping it around the bead like that, and then wrap around the wire, coming in front again like that, and pushing it over. Okay, and then I'm pushing these because we want these two to be flat, the wire to be flat, so I'm pushing both down at the same time just to make it neat looking. Okay, now it's ready to introduce the next bead. Okay, I'm gonna, there, push that bead, tightened it up. You probably saw it tighten up in there. Okay, I'm holding the bead in place. Oh, I want to need that down a little bit. Wrap around the bead. Now wrap around the wire. Okay. Straighten that up a bit. There, and we continue doing that. Putting another bead, cinching it up tight, and wrapping around, weaving around it until we have the same length on this side as we have on this side. Okay, and you notice how the weaving curved here? All you need to do to fix that is just gently push it like this. And like that. And it's going to do it to you again and again. And the more you move it, the stronger it gets. So that's a bonus. Okay, so I want you to continue putting your beads on like we were doing with those three, and measure your length and really pay attention to your length on these beads. Measure it near the end. Measure every single bead. Okay, I'd rather it be a tiny bit shorter than the weaving. Okay, not longer. So it's very important, because once you've got too much on, you can't undo it. So you got to pay attention. Okay, and I will check back with you in a bit. Okay, I'm back, and I've got, I think, pretty much exactly the same length of beads as I do weaving. And I've got, it's obviously a bigger bead than the rondelles, so because I only took 11 beads instead of 13. So now the next step is we're going to straighten out the weave a little bit, and we're also going to straighten out this so it all faces forward. So gently straighten this, bend this so that they're level. Okay, and that fixed that pretty good. Okay, so I'm not in too bad a shape here. You may have to go like this and, you know, make them all facing forward. When you're new at this, it's much more difficult, and it might take you a little bit more getting them all facing forward. I find that if you actually bend them both back a little bit extra, it looks better than being perfectly straight across this way. And it works with the bending a little bit better too. Okay, so now that you've got that, we're gonna bend this just a little bit like that, and we're going to start forming our heart. And now I mentioned in my last video, which I did tonight too, that bending weaving is way more forgiving than bending a bare wire. So because you've got you've got wires pulling from different directions, so they counteract each other and prevent kinking. So it's great for molding, and we're going to mold this up to make the top of the heart. We're doing this freehand, guys, and so if you get it a kink and it's not smooth, you can always bend it back and rebend it. And weaving is just very forgiving to work with. I love it. It's fun. Okay, got that. And I usually try to get my weaving done first. It's hard to show on camera. I'll back up a bit. Okay. You have to do it till you're happy with it, because you're the one making it. Okay. And I'm not sure if it's bent enough higher up here. That looks pretty good. Now, I'm flipping it over. The wires are getting in my way. And I'm got this at the back. And now I'm going to do the same with the beads. Now, and again, this is easier to form because we've got extra wires going in different directions. So it's got more movability. I'm trying to remember which one do we want on top. I'm looking at my other heart. We want the weaving on top of the bead wire. So when we're like this, the weaving's going to go on top. Yep, that's what we want, okay. Now is that the same shape? We want this also, the weaving wire. Now, I was thinking, because at my last project, I had the weaving wire at 26 gauge. I might have said 26 gauge earlier. Not sure. This is 28 gauge. Different size than my last project. Okay, get that out of my way. Put it down in the middle. And down and out. Like that. Okay. How does that look? I think that's pretty good. Okay. So this wire is going up like this. We're gonna, whoop, wrong. Don't need this in there. So the two wires are going up like this. And then the three wires are gonna go up like that. And we're locked in place. And now you could do more shaping if you need to. And I'm actually going to. I'm peeking over the camera now and seeing that my heart didn't have enough shape. Okay. Just comparing, it looks a tiny bit smaller. Yeah, because I had 2.5 inches on this one. Okay, so that's the difference. It's a tiny bit smaller. Still beautiful. Okay. Now the next thing we gotta do is, yes, that's what we want to do. We're gonna do this part here with the bead. Okay, and yes, that's how I did a corkscrew swirl here, and it's going clockwise. No, it's not gonna work. I need to do this first. I'm gonna swirl this, get this wire out of the way. It's being challenging. This is the hardest part of the heart, I find. So you're taking the bottom wire and you're making a swirl like that. And then you're taking the next wire and copying it. And then the third wire, and again, copying it, going on the outside. And that just locks it into place that much more. Okay, sometimes this turns out to be a big swirl. This one's pretty tiny, but then tiny goes with this heart. Okay, and the weaving wire gets tangled again. Now we're going to do a corkscrew swirl. So I'm just twirling it like that, and that's just making it stronger. Okay, and then we're going to almost do a loop with that. The weaving wire got tangled again. It's a real pain, I know. I'm sorry. But you'll see why it's important to keep it on later. Okay, so we're going like that. And it's backwards from what I wanted it. So this one's going to be a little bit different. Okay. But that's okay. We want the bead to be on this wire, and we're going to wrap around it. So it's going to flip-flop, and that's okay. Adds interest. So putting the bead on the left. And this is an 8mm bead. Okay, and we want that to sit about there, like kind of in the center of that loop. So you kind of want to hold it in place, and then we're going to make a frame for it with this other wire. And it's awkward, I know. So that'll hold the bead in place. And then we're going to link these up and then do another counterclockwise swirl. And my camera moved, sorry. Now this is awkward to show on camera. I'm so sorry. So what this swirl does is it actually locks the bead in place. Locks all the wires into place. And it actually makes this side of the heart stronger. Okay, so everybody's is going to turn out differently. Each heart of mine turns out slightly different. I'm going to make it lock. Sometimes I make it lock over here and sometimes there. This one just naturally wants to go up here. Okay, so I'm holding it in place, holding this. I want the bead to be there, and that's what was the deciding factor. And bend it over. And I had lots extra wire, more than I thought, because I wove a lot less beads. I used it, but so you still